Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Superboy Beyond. It's Tom and Chris here. We're doing one of our patented commentaries. We're going back to season 4 today with the part 2 of Know Thine Enemy, which we did part 1 last week. You guys know the drill. You're not going to see any of the episode in the episode. Heavily filtered version right up there. So I'm going to count you in with a 3, 2, 1 play, and we'll get started with part 2. And this is where it starts to really cook. So get yourselves ready. And 3, 2, 1, play.
So yeah, part 1 was pretty much all set up, but we did still get some interesting details about Luthor's childhood, which is interesting.
Yeah, and while we are believing that a lot of it is true, it's still somewhat skewed.
Yeah, he's definitely embellished the details to a certain extent, because he wants to make him, like, in his own memory. Of course he's justified in that situation. Of course he's the good guy that saved his sister in his own mind.
Yeah.
They always say the best villains don't actually believe that they're evil, although Lex definitely knows that he's a bad guy. Like, he's got no illusions about that. Like, he knows that he's an evil man.
Yep. He's definitely playing the martyr card here.
Yeah.
The woe is me. Look at my childhood.
I miss when you used to see those big style globes just in rooms. I haven't seen a globe in God knows how long. The old ones where you could raise the top and you'd have like bottles of liquor in there and stuff, like in old gangster movies. I kind of want one. I've got no space for it though.
Yeah, and one thing I want to comment on that hologram of Lex in the device, the bald cap. You can't actually tell that it's a bald cap.
Yeah, it looks good. There were a few moments in this show when you could tell it's a bald cap, but this looks good. I mean, there's a couple of wrinkles down like sort of the sides of his head, like there. That's usually an indicator of a bald cap, but I mean, it easily could have just been like wrinkles on his forehead, because look, he's got them there as well when he's emoting.
Yeah,
they're just accentuated by the makeup, aren't they? So, plus you could also say, they look like veins or whatever on his head. Like, some bald people genuinely do have like veins going down like the sides of their heads, don't they?
Yes.
I'm sure one day when my hair finally finishes falling out, I might end up with one myself. Who knows? Poor Darla. Do feel bad for her across the show. But again, she's acting very much like Leo was, very much like his mother is in the flashbacks there. Maybe that's part of why he can't respect her as well.
Because she doesn't stand up to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian Spicer, one of the directors on this show that I always enjoy their work. I also enjoyed their work directing the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. I always feel the need to mention that because, there might be some people watching that aren't aware that Brian Spicer also invented like Ivan Ooze and all of, well, I suppose he didn't invent Ivan Ooze, but he directed the movie where he was created. I still think that's an underrated movie. But yeah, you can already tell, Luthor is evil at this point because he's practically smiling at the idea of killing them both. He's toying with them and all of that. So yeah, by this point, he was too far gone. I'm not surprised he didn't save the mother.
I mean, if his father's behavior towards him is real, let's just throw it out there.
I would imagine it is, to be honest. That's the one detail that I imagine he was pretty on point about.
He is justified in removing the father.
Doing it in that way, I mean, surely there are legal routes to do it. He didn't have to resort to murder, but you can understand his motivations at least.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what his father did for a living. For all we know, his father was a cop.
That would explain a lot, I like how Luthor's actually he actually looks like really disappointed. Even like the robot version, like the hologram of him, he's annoyed that they escaped. Just a great detail. Because he could have just kept playing it completely emotionless.
But there's enough of Lex in that program that he would get like that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And now they know why he snapped.
I wonder what happened to Lena in the other timelines, on the other Earths. Like in the Sovereign's Earth, like God knows what would have happened to her there.
Probably murdered.
Probably killed by the Sovereign.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, on the darker Earth, where Lex is dead, she probably, breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah. Knowing what we know about the end of this episode, yeah, she's probably just in hiding in that timeline.
And now, finally, Darla is standing up to him. And he doesn't believe it.
No. Yeah, like this little speech here to Darla, he could be talking to his mother there. You're like a street dog. You just take it and take it and take it. Like maybe that line of dialogue explains why he didn't kill the mother too. Why he did kill the mother too, I mean. I love that Darla actually pulled the trigger though. It does show that she's strong.
And he's in shock that she actually did it.
Yeah. Just think how much trouble could have been, diverted if she had actually aimed for the heart or whatever and taken him out then. But I suppose by that point they wouldn't have been able to stop the countdown. Because only Lex can do it. Although maybe the Lex robot would have done it.
Maybe, maybe not. We don't know.
Maybe the Lex robot would have been more emotionless or something. He's just like, yeah, I don't care. It's kind of cool how they can make such a intriguing and exciting episode when most of it is this part is spent just Lana and Superboy looking at a computer screen, reading exposition. But it's such an intriguing story because we we're already invested in these characters that it doesn't matter that there's very little action. Like this is one of the more exciting episodes, even without it. This is nice and all, but the world is going to end. Maybe kiss later.
Yeah. Maybe
You're on a deadline here.
Yeah, maybe wait until the countdown is like 2 seconds to go.
Yeah. That's a similar sort of. I have a similar sort of problem with that moment there, as I do with like in Man of Steel when Lois and Superman kiss like in the rubble of Metropolis as it's like smoldering and falling down around them. It's just like it's kind of an inappropriate moment for it, really. One of the better flying shots. The compositing looks pretty decent there. Which I guess just goes to show that by this point in the season, they dialed it in a little bit more. I would love to have seen what they could have done with a fifth season, like how much better the effects might have looked by then. Still, it's not to be. Unless there's a Dr. Winger in our timeline too. I really do think, though, if I had access to Dr. Winger's machine, the first thing I'd do is go to a timeline where Superboy continued for a couple more years, just so I could get the Blu-ray and bring it home. It'd have to be a timeline where it also had a Blu-ray remaster as well, obviously.
Yeah, which we both know that would never happen.
I'd also have to go to the timeline where Enterprise wasn't cancelled when it was, because I think it was just getting good. But oh well.
Knowing our luck, that in that same timeline, Star Trek went on to 5 seasons.
Yeah, although the original series of Star Trek was getting worse and worse as it went on. By the end, let's face it, they cut the budget and Roddenberry was less and less involved and the writing was getting worse. I don't know. It's one of the reasons the original series is probably one of my least favourite. Though their movies are good. I even like some of their bad movies.
Mm.
So where is Lena hiding?
She got herself a new apartment.
But she's in the same city as Lex.
Pretty much, yeah.
I thought part of the point was that she wanted to get as far away from Lex as possible. Like, shouldn't she have moved to like China or something? Just go to the other side of the world, go to Fiji, Now, if I was Lena, the first thing I would have done after faking my death is move to Australia. Luthor's never going to find you there. Unless General Zod gifts it to him one day. I mean, it's a pretty good plan of Luthor's anyway. Like, just even without the destroying the world part, like just replacing himself with a robot. It's a pretty good plan. Like, it's as strong as Superboy, it seems. I'll say this as well: the casting for Lena, both versions of Lena, I think is just spot on. They look so much alike. Like you can really believe that the little girl and this adult woman are the same person.
Yeah.
That was one thing they always did pretty well on this show. You know, when we saw young Clark in flashbacks with Aunt Cassandra and that, I think the actor they chose to play him looked enough like Gerard that it worked. Same for Road to Hell.
Although I have to say the one from Into the Mystery was a lot better than the one from Road to Hell.
Yeah. But I mean, they were two different ages, weren't they?
Mm.
And I think the Into the Mystery one was helped by the fact that he was already wearing the glasses by that point. She has a point. It's not her fault that her brother is an absolute psychopath, you know.
I think that a lot of that is the fact that he's as intelligent as he is, because you know the old saying, there's a fine line between genius and insanity, and the fact that her father beat him mercilessly.
Yeah.
But Lana does make the point that Lex would not have gone this route if Lena had not faked her death.
Lena did just have an interesting line there, though. She did just confirm the fact that their father was a monster. So at least we know that detail from Lex's little mind game was true. That's a good shot as well. I love that. The way the camera switched focus from foreground to background and back again with two Sherman Howards in the same shot. Like that's just a perfect shot as far as I'm concerned. Oh, Chris has disappeared. I guess Chris's computer maybe just shut down again. Or somebody's walked into the room.
No.
Oh, he's back.
I got it back temporarily. Sorry about that, guys.
I'm sure they don't mind. I do love a nice underground lair. I just think it's a cool idea, even though it's clearly above ground, the actual set, because it looks like an old barn or something. Maybe it's like a wine cellar or something. I don't know, but
Looks like it's the same layer they used from Change of Heart.
yeah, maybe. There was an interesting lair that looked similar to this a couple of episodes ago in our commentaries. I forget which episode it was, though. Can't remember for the life of me what it was. Oh, well.
Mm.
I do like how emotionally affected Lex was for the moment, but then he's gone cold again so quickly that it just shows probably some of that even was a facade.
I think all of Lex's humanity is actually in the machine.
Hmm. It's almost a shame that the robot Lex was shut down there. Might have been interesting to have a good version of Lex running around.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe in season 5, I'll explain away the Hugo Strange turning Lex good, as actually Hugo Strange made a robot and transferred all of Lex's humanity into it, and the real Lex is like chained up in Arkham Asylum or something,
Yeah.
being experimented on by Strange. Would be an interesting twist, even though I just gave it away. But never mind. It'll be a long time till I write that episode anyway. It's funny though, you almost feel sorry for Luthor by the end. But
Yeah.
then he just has that switch and he just proves that actually no, he's completely and utterly evil. And that we are absolutely wrong to be empathizing with a man like that. Yeah. Great
Yeah.
episode. Maybe the 2 best Lex Luthor episodes of the show.
Yeah, because
They're
this
certainly my
finally gives
favorite
us an
ones.
insight, a real insight into him. Yeah, we got a start of that with Mind
Mind
Game,
games.
but this really gives us an insight as to why he went the route he did.
Absolutely. Just a
You know,
phenomenal episode. It just, it's J.M Dematteis like proving like how good a writer he is. Because let's face it, there were other very, very accomplished comic book writers that worked on this show and weren't quite as successful. Kerry Bates's episodes aren't the best. Did Denny O'Neil write an episode?
Denny O'Neil wrote 2 of them. And they were
Yeah.
both Mixes Pitlicks.
Yeah, I like the first Mixer's Pitlick, not the second one so much. I know that he's one of the ones who gave interviews saying that he really didn't think the show pulled off his scripts too well. But I don't think even the script for Mr. and Mrs. Superboy is particularly good. So,
Yeah.
I think some writers for comics, they just have a hard time transitioning to a different medium. J.M. Dematteis is not one of them. And let's face it, he would go on to do animated DC stuff. And he wrote, for The Man Who Has Everything, the adaptation for Justice League Unlimited.
Yes.
He's done some phenomenal work. But I do think that this is my favorite TV thing that he's done to date.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the best thing he's written for TV. And it gives us it really, as I said, I've said this before, seasons 3 and 4 were a lot more introspective. They were more psychological in what they were doing. Yeah, there's a lot of superhero action, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of stuff that was very, delve into the characters. Mind games, perfect example of that.
Even
Know thine
episodes like
enemy.
Paranoia, Know
Yeah.
Thine Enemy, Paranoia, like they're very much character studies. And like Into the Mystery, another J.M Dematteis episode, there's no actual villain in that episode. Like for a while, it almost frames Death as the villain, but then you realize by the end that actually no, Death is actually kind of the good guy in the episode.
Well, not
Or
a
the good
good
girl
guy,
rather.
not a bad guy, just a force of nature.
Yeah, it's just part of
She's just
life,
doing her job, which is to take people
when it's
when
their
it's
time.
their time.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal episode. Um, yeah, just a great 2-parter. This one. I can't think of anything else really to say about it. I'm pretty sure I said everything I wanted to during the commentary itself. Yeah. What do you want to give this out of 10?
I would say this is probably a 9.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. 9.25 at most, maybe, just purely because I think 9.5 is what I'll give to. Although actually, if it's on the season 4 scale, I think I could argue 9.5 is fair.
Yeah.
When you compare it to the rest of season 4, yeah, I think it is. If you were comparing it to season 3, it might drop down a bit, but yeah, 9.25 maybe.
All right, we'll go with that.
Highest rated episode for this season. To Be Human is also a very good 2-parter this season, but I do think this one is slightly better for me, even though Bizarro is just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Unless there's anything else you want to say on this episode.
I don't think there's really anything else we can say. I mean, we've already discussed, how this really delves into Lex's psyche. I mean, as you've pointed out, Lex is a narcissist, and I am my headcanon, is that season 1, even though they wanted to kind of forget it, season 1 still happened. That Lex still was there, and all of that bluster that Scott Wells had as Lex is just an act.
Yeah.
And this proves that it was an act.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's an interesting extra bit of information about Lex's backstory. And okay, as we've said, they don't quite mesh together, but there's enough detail there that you could easily form your own headcanon as to how it all slots in to the timeline.
And even though I love the Silver Age origin of Lex, that he was Superboy's friend, and then there was the lab accident, and Superboy tried to put the fire out, and it caused his hair to fall out. As much as I love that, adapting it into season 1 to make Lex go full on baddie isn't really an explanation as to why he went off the deep end.
I mean, he was kind of already there anyway. Like, he was already a really bad dude, but that was like his descent into madness. Now, maybe season 1, he was still an evil piece of shit, but he was calculated. Like, he was still basically sane. He was evil, but he was sane. And
but
I guess the hair thing was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, with all the stuff that J.M. Dematteis established in this episode, we now see why that one little straw is what finally made him go off the deep end. Because again, Lex was very vain, very, very pompous, and then to lose his hair because of the actions of the superhero. Yeah, that would push him over the edge.
Yeah. And let's face it, Lex in season 1 was very appearance oriented. Like, he always wore like very nice clothes for the era. He was in good shape. I realize that's just purely because Scott Wells was a model, but like Lex was muscular, like he was athletic in season 1. And to have to lose that. I mean, he didn't have to lose the athleticism to become Warren Eckworth. He was wearing suits most of the time. Nobody would have noticed, but obviously that's just a factor of changing actors, isn't it? But yeah, it must have all added together to create just a perfect storm of madness for Luthor.
Yeah.
And we know that that's part of what sent him mad, because Sherman Howard's very first episode, like, he talks about how sort of angry he is about the fact that he's had to change his face. Like, didn't he say that he put acid on his vocal cords to lower his voice as well?
Yep.
Like, yeah, Luthor will go a long way to get away, but it's got to be eating him up inside. The fact that he changed his appearance, looked like Warren Eckworth, and then immediately blew his cover anyway. So there was no real need for it.
That whole thing, that whole storyline should have played out over not just 2 episodes, but over 5, 6, 7.
The whole season. Yeah, just have it as like a battle of wits, Clark versus Lex. Similar to how Lois and Clark did in its first season. Lex wasn't the primary antagonist of every episode, but his presence was felt throughout. Like, Yeah, and a lot of it wasn't a hand-to-hand like fist fight against the villain. Like Superman had to be smart to take Luthor down, and even then, he didn't really have that much to do with it by the end.
Yeah.
It was pretty much just Luthor's time. I guess he just Luthor and Lois and Clark by the end of season 1, like he'd pretty much blown his cover with everyone that trusted him.
I mean, he kind of blew his cover with Lois, you know, in the whole All Shook Up episode, creating her apartment in his
I mean, that was creepy on its own. Yeah. A clever idea though, you know, just all they had to do is reuse the set that they used for Lois's apartment. They just put a corridor outside that was more bunker like. But yeah, very clever use of sets. But we're really getting off topic now. But you know, we're talking about Lex Luthor, and I think Lois and Clark did a lot right with Luthor in season 1. But I don't hate his appearances later seasons. I like when they put John Shea in the bald cap, and they even covered his eyebrows so he didn't even have those. Like that was a really cool thing. It made him look quite threatening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think bald Lex is just a better look. Like he's always more threatening as a villain if he's not got his hair, because it just he looks like his true self like that. When he's got the wig on, it's like he's putting on a slight disguise, humanizing himself a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah, and we shall see how Nicholas Hoult looks with bald Lex.
Yeah, I don't know if we've seen any pictures. I don't think I've seen any set photos of what he looks like, but we know he shaved his head because he's been seen with a shaved head. But by the time photos of him were taken, most of it had grown back in, so he wasn't Lex Luthor. But it'd be cool to see what he's like in the movie. I know apparently he's a lot closer to, you know, Michael Rosenbaum's Lex than, you know, Gene Hackman or Sherman Howard, or certainly he's not going to be like Jesse Eisenberg's Lex. I think they've been pretty clear about the fact that they didn't think that worked. You know.
Yeah. Let's just leave that where it belongs.
Yeah. It's funny. If he had played Lex, like Jesse Eisenberg isn't a terrible casting for Lex Luthor. He just had the wrong take on the character, you know. Like Jesse Eisenberg, as even just when he played Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network, you know, I'd say he's a lot more Luthor-like in that movie than he is in Batman vs Superman. And if you want him to be suave and confident and slightly charming as that version of Lex, like you've got Now You See Me, like he played a magician in that, but he's very charismatic and confident in that movie. Combine those two performances, you've got a perfect Lex Luthor. So, yeah. It's just a shame that that's not the way he went with it. But never mind. Still getting really off topic, so maybe we should just end it here. 9.25. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week.